If you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the business of lifelong learning, you're in the right place. I'm Celisa Steele.
And I'm Jeff Cobb, and this is the Leading Learning Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode 159 of the Leading Learning Podcast. Today happens to mark the opening of registration for Learning Technology Design, or LTD, our annual virtual conference. And we thought that'd be a good opportunity to pull back the curtain a bit and talk a little about the planning process for that event and share our experience in a way that we think will be useful to leading learning listeners. But before we do that, we have a message from our sponsor for the fourth quarter of 2018.
Our sponsor this quarter is Review My LMS, a collaboration between us here at Tagoras and the folks at 100 Reviews. Review My LMS is, as the name suggests, a site where users can share and access reviews of learning management systems, and the focus is specifically on systems that are a good fit for learning businesses, meaning organizations that market and sell lifelong learning. If you contribute a review, you get access to all existing and future reviews. There are already more than 130 on the site, and if you don't have a review to contribute, there's also a subscription option. For details, go to reviewmylms.com.
Definitely do check out Review My LMS and keep it top of mind as you're exploring learning technologies in the future. But right now, let's get back to our top of mind topic for this episode of the podcast. And as we were saying, that's going to be Learning Technology Design, LTD, our annual virtual conference. And we are right now in the thick of planning for it. And like so many of our listeners, we know a lot of you do planning for events, have big events that you do annually. So we thought we'd share a little bit of our process, what's going on here, with the hope that, it stirs some thinking around your own process. Maybe you can pick up some things that we're doing that are valuable to you. And particularly if you haven't done a virtual conference before, get a little bit of a feel for, how things work behind that.
And another thing is that we're going to share some of the topics and formats that are resonating with folks that we've reached out to who are potential attendees. And, our experience is that folks find it very valuable to hear what others are thinking about and wrestling with, just because that gives you sort of a benchmark against your peers or similar organizations to see if you're dealing with some of the same issues or if you go, oh, I should be thinking about that.
Definitely. And we should probably back up even a little bit and say what learning technology design is, just in case I can't believe there are listeners out there who might not be familiar with it, but I know it happens. So learning technology design is, as we said, our annual virtual conference. And this is an event that's designed specifically for professionals in the business of continuing education, professional development, and lifelong learning. So, organizations that have to market and sell educational experiences to adult lifelong learners. And to our knowledge, there really is not another event that focuses on that group of people, our people, so to speak. And so we're in the process now of building out the program for that event, coming up with the stuff, the topics, the content that's going to resonate with that particular audience, and that's a good place to start because how we build the program is a big part of it. It's how we build it and then how we make sure it's delivered in the right way. And, we always build the program for LTD in interaction with the attendees and the potential attendees. So we don't generally post a complete, formal program until shortly before the event. So it's in process all the way up. And we go through, a lot of different methods of determining, what that program is going to be, what those sessions are going to be at the event. So, things that are not necessarily specific to LTD that we're doing on just an ongoing basis. We continually monitor the market. Anybody who receives our Leading Learning newsletter, for example, knows that we're constantly curating things that are going on out there and kind of keeping our finger on the pulse so that we know the new trends. We know what people are talking about. We know what some of the struggles and challenges are out there. And we're continually writing and talking about that. We actually have a continuously running survey as well for anybody who signs up for our Leading Learning newsletter. We ask them to complete a survey to tell us about their challenges, their opportunities, what's top of mind for them right now, and to weigh in on some specific topics or topical areas that we're always testing out. And then, of course, we're having frequent conversations with colleagues all the time, our clients, the vendors who work out in this market that we serve.
And of course, then the interviewees, the folks we get to talk to
Right.
on the Leading Learning podcast, or we also get to pick their brains in terms of issues, challenges, opportunities, new technologies, new ideas. And so, you mentioned that we have these, at least 3 different ways that we're kind of on a continuous basis trying to monitor the market in general, and also specifically the folks that we serve through the newsletter and through the podcast. But we also have some efforts that we execute specific to LTD, and making sure that we are actually focused on what all this might mean in the context of this annual virtual conference. And so part of that is that we ourselves engage in here, reflecting back on what's worked. This is going to be our 4th LTD conference. And so, every time we've done it, we've paused and done after-action reviews. We've even done some mid-action reviews when we've had the opportunity. And
this isn't just us, closed up in our office doing this. We do this for the world to listen to. There are actual podcast episodes around this. We'll link to them in the show notes for this podcast.
And again, it's, we did that as part of a podcast episode because we think this sort of thinking out loud can be useful. I mean, it's the kind of thing we would love to hear from other folks as they're thinking out loud. And so that's the kind of thing we want to offer, because we do think it can be valuable for others as they're thinking through their own process. We do collect evaluations.
Of course.
After the fact. And part of that effort is also collecting testimonials. We bake that into evaluations, ask people, if they'd be willing to provide a testimonial, get it there. And then sometimes, too, we know individuals who've expressed particular gratitude or particular excitement around an aspect of a past LTD, and we might reach out directly to them.
And that's going to be social proof, of course, which we're always preaching about social proof and getting that social proof for what you're doing. That's one of the best ways to demonstrate value. But it's also, as part of that, when you're asking somebody to give a testimonial, you're going to hear what really resonated with them. Like, what is it that comes to mind if they're going to give a testimonial? And whatever comes out of their mouth, you probably need to be tuning into and listening to. It's giving you some good clues for what you're doing right, what you might, could potentially be doing better. Even glowing testimonials might often have a little bit in there that, we could actually do a little bit better on that, couldn't we?
Damned by faint praise.
That's right.
And we also... So those are sort of things that we've done kind of after the fact or during the course of past events. But as we're heading into each virtual conference, as we're heading into LTD this year, we also send out open-ended emails where we're asking folks to let us know what topics they would like to see covered there. And we try to couch it in terms of, we generally ask for topics, but also to encourage them to get to those topics, to be thinking through what challenges and opportunities they're facing in their learning business.
And we'll ask people who've attended before, too, about their past takeaways. So we'll go back to people who were with us last year or the year before and say, what's sticking with you at this point? What are you actually doing? And again, this is the kind of information that you get that you can then, narrow it down and go out and do some surveying and voting on. But to go out there open-ended in the first place, we just find incredibly valuable. And I know a lot of organizations shy away from that because it just sounds messy. It sounds like it can be a lot of effort, and it can be. Though you have to keep in mind, you email 1,000 people, you're not going to hear back from 1,000 people, but you'll hear back from enough to get some real insight into what's really resonating with people. And it doesn't take that much time to sift through that and start narrowing down to what's really on people's minds. And we're going to get to some of that here in just a little bit.
And I think, too, it's important that we do really embrace this open-ended perspective because, like you said, Jeff, we're already monitoring the market. We're, curating the Leading Learning newsletter. And it would be possible and maybe easy for us to say, we already know.
Yeah, we got it. We got it
this nailed. Covered. Yeah. But this is a really good way to make sure that you aren't entering into putting together the program with too many implicit assumptions about what the audience needs. This is the beginning of marketing. I mean, this is really making sure you know what your audience needs and wants.
It's funny. I was looking back at an old post this morning that I wrote called Where Marketing Starts. And the punchline on that is marketing starts at the place where there are no assumptions, basically. And you got to get to that place. And the only way is to put it out there and see what you get. And once we get some things back, and we have gotten some stuff back so far, we'll keep whittling it down and narrowing it and focusing it, and then we will eventually go out with that sort of more close-ended survey, usually saying here are the however many 10, 15 topics that we've really been hearing about. And ask people, how likely are you to participate in a session, featuring this topic? And by that point, we're trying to frame it as an actual session title too, to make sure it's really clear what they would be getting. So we'll get to that, but we go through quite a lot before we ever get to that point, so that we know when we put those out there for people to essentially vote on, that they're voting on things that we know they care about in the first place, and that we've got the kind of right list to check against.
And because you said voting, I just want to highlight here that while we do ask for votes, this is not a democracy.
No, that's true. That's true.
We certainly are looking for what resonates, but we may, occasionally say we really, even though this one did not get a lot of traction, that
it's important.
It's important, and we really feel like we need. We would be doing a disservice to the learners if we didn't talk about X.
No, it's a good point, because we've talked a lot in the past about from a strategy standpoint, do you lead your market or do you follow your market? And I mean, really, you have to do a little bit of both, but we're big fans of really knowing your market well enough and being ahead of your market that you're leading your market. You're setting the pace for that market, and that's certainly what we strive to do. I'm not going to say that we're always successful with that, but we think particularly organizations that are providing the continuing education, professional development, lifelong learning for a field or industry ought to be leading learning in that field or industry. I mean, that's the name of this podcast. It's one of our big brands. There's a reason for that. And so we're trying to lead learning at the same time that we're getting input. We're obviously shaping that with everything we already know and everything we've seen over time to make some decisions about what's really going to be the most impactful program for this event.
So maybe we should get a little bit specific. We've sort of talked generally about this idea of for example, getting testimonials, but let's share one just so you listeners can get a sense of kind of what we might be getting as a testimonial, and then sort of what we do with it, where that takes us. So we have one from Eric Hill. He's Senior Vice President of Corporate Operations at the Enterprise Wireless Alliance. He was an LTD attendee last year, and he was a great attendee. It's the kind of learner you want in the room,
Definitely.
Really engaged and asking questions and, asking for the help that he knew he needed. He characterizes himself as a newbie in this world. And so, he was just sort of putting it out there and saying, I need help with this, and just seeing what folks would come back with. And so the testimonial that he offered when we asked was, I'm happy to have been a participant, as now I've experienced what constitutes high value for online learning.
That made my heart beat a little faster when he that was unsolicited too. Actually, that just
that's right. That's true.
Yeah, we didn't even ask him for that. He just said that as part of an exchange, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, Eric, can we use that? That's fantastic. And there were so many reasons why that was such valuable feedback, really. I mean, we're using it as a testimonial, but it's a type of feedback. And, one of the reasons was just what you were saying, Celisa, that, I mean, he himself was so engaged as a learner. And the reason, one of the big reasons he got so much value out of it is because he brought himself to it.
Absolutely.
And that's something we talked about. That was thematic throughout last year's LTD and at our events in general. We talk about the learner stepping up, the learner taking responsibility. That's where so much of the value is going to be generated. And Eric was doing that. But then the other part of it, did have to do with what we were doing with the event. And we had we did a lot with community around the event last year. It was an extended event. We had discussion boards going. We did a lot to, kind of focus the discussions and have interplay between the discussions and what was going on in the live sessions. And this was one of those kind of success cases with that where, Eric posted something on the discussion boards about being a newbie and about, how does he really get into that? And we were able to engage on the discussion boards around it, but we were also able to then bring it into a live session, really dig into his issues, then take it back to the discussion boards, have other participants weigh in, some who had more experience, some who were in the same position as Eric and feeling like they were a newbie. So, it sounds like a simple statement. I've now experienced what constitutes high value for online learning, but in the context that came out of, it was just packed with so much valuable information for us, and it helps us know, that emphasizing that learner involvement, and really, saying there is a responsibility around engagement, and continuing to hone the way that community interplays with the live interactions in LTD. Those are going to be supremely important going into this coming year's version of LTD.
And so I think another example that we can offer that came out of LTD 2018 has to do with Nancy Bacon of the Washington Nonprofits and Mark Nillis of Humentum. And they both were presenters, facilitators as part of LTD 2018. But they got to know each other over the course of the virtual conference last year. And this, I think, ties into what you were saying about community. You were talking specifically about the discussion boards, but what Nancy and Mark have been able to do is take that sense of community, that connection that they formed through this virtual conference, and extend it and continue it. And so now they're collaborating together and working to produce an ebook that's going to focus on really integrating learning into conferences. And so that for us is another fabulous example, a great thing for us to be aware of as an outcome of LTD 2018, because it definitely wasn't, I don't think we could have ever imagined that something, this specific would come out of it, but it definitely is a great feedback to us in terms of people are able to make connections and continue them beyond the virtual conference.
Yeah, it's great because, networking is always named as one of those great values of any sort of event. People tend to think that you're not going to get the networking in the virtual events. We found that to be completely untrue, basically. Again, the people who bring themselves to it and engage are going to get a lot out of it. And, we got this feedback from Nancy and Mark from partly from going out and doing the kind of content call that we did around what are the issues and challenges you're seeing right now, and Nancy came back and mentioned that they were collaborating like this, and then we asked people about their key takeaways, and Mark said this was one of my key takeaways, that I was able to establish this relationship, this professional relationship that's now been so valuable, and we've heard about that from other people too that have mentioned they formed these relationships that they've carried on, and for us. To be thinking going into the next LTD, how do we keep making that happen, and how do we keep highlighting that it's happening too? To make it clear that there are valuable, concrete things that come out of this. It's not just the networking was great. This is actually producing tangible results for these two people and then for everybody they're going to be serving with what they're actually creating out of this. So that was fantastic to see. And that's, so far we've only talked about what we were able to kind of get out of getting some testimonials from the last event and what we're able to get, for kind of doing a content call and asking people for their valuable takeaways from the past. But then, as we've mentioned, we have actually asked about the topics, the top of mind challenges, issues, opportunities that people have right now. And again, just kind of an open call for this, and then a follow-on, to share some of what we got and ask, what here resonates with you, what sparks more ideas. So we're at a point where, the program is starting to form, and we can talk a little bit about what some of the top of mind issues have been. We're not going to guarantee that these are what end up on the program, but they're definitely pointing in that direction.
So one of them that's kind of bubbled to the top through this process is a topic around creating truly useful surveys and assessments that really measure both learning and learner satisfaction. Yep.
And I'll give a shout out to Jack Corson on this one, because he's kind of skeptical, I think, of this whole sort of crusade right now to get evaluations that actually measure learning, and the criticism of traditional smile sheets, which are basically measuring whether people liked it or not. And I think Jack's all in favor of learning, but he also makes the point that, look, we're in the learning business. It matters if they like it because they're our customers, and we need them to like what we're doing and to keep coming back. So, there is this need there to balance how do we get information that's tells us if we're having the kind of impact we want to have from an educational standpoint, but that's also telling us that things are going well from a business standpoint. And I mean, our perspective is the two merge at some point, that if you're not actually having educational impact over the long run, they're not going to keep coming back, even if they said they liked it. That's going to be, I think, a perspective to explore on this. But this whole idea of really getting those useful surveys and assessments, I think is more top of mind than ever for folks.
So another topic that's bubbled up is around building or redesigning. So either starting with existing content or building from scratch content that's easier for consumption, that it provides higher engagement, and that has greater impact.
Yeah, and this is a great one, and I think to a certain extent, probably the whole micro-learning buzz trend word is lying behind this, but I think this points to really the outcome that people would like to get from something like micro-learning. That we know people feel time pressured. There's been some stuff about attention spans being shorter, which I don't buy into, but nonetheless, we know content needs to be higher value than it's potentially been in the past, but also usually needs to be briefer while still achieving impact. And it's a difficult goal. And, I personally haven't seen or heard a lot at conferences other than what a great idea that is, So it's going to be on us to make sure that we're able to deliver some actual examples and case studies of this happening.
So a third topic that's come up is around strategy, and that's a topic near and dear to our hearts, just given how fundamental strategy is to running a successful learning business, but specifically, multi-year strategy and operational planning that really moves beyond that 101 level. Yeah,
this is a big one. And I was glad to see that this was brought up. We didn't, we're bringing it up. We didn't bring it up. Somebody else did, and it did turn out to be one of the more popular ones so far. And connecting strategy and operations, which we probably haven't done enough of, in talking about strategy in the past. So yeah, definitely looking forward. I feel like that one will be on the program in some form or another. We just need to figure out exactly how we do it and how it gets presented. And those were the top three. And then right after that, we have another few that are rating pretty high so far. One around building a certificate program and particularly taking existing credentialing programs into online learning opportunities. Another interesting one that came up, and I think Mark Nillis may have raised this one, and others jumped in on it, is learning versus performance support. So the just-in-time, helping them right there at the bedside or wherever they are performing their job, versus the deeper over time learning that we need to be responsible for, and balancing the two of those.
And then success stories and or revenue generation models from micro-learning has
there
also
it is. There's the buzzword. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there has been a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement around micro-learning, but as we sort of were talking about earlier around that building and redesigning content for easier consumption, there's been a real question around how do you actually monetize micro-learning? Is there a model for it? And so I think folks are at that point of now they want to see, okay, what does it actually look like to roll out micro-learning that's having an impact and generating some level of income for the organization?
And then this one was really interesting, and definitely I would like to see us come up with something good on this. Automated and semi-automated approaches to curating and personalizing the full learner experience. And, this feels to me like the holy grail. We often hear organizations that want to provide the Amazon type experience. I think this is pointing in that direction, though it's both automated and semi-automated. But, really doing curation, really doing personalization effectively. We've gotten big back on the curation bandwagon lately. I mean, it's something we've always talked about a bit, but I did a presentation at the Association Executives of North Carolina on that recently, which I was surprised how many people were in the room, were really engaged and interested in it. And I think people are starting to get this whole concept and how important it is. So taking a look at that. And then there is actually one last one in this sort of second tier here around meaningfully engaging learners with tools like badges and leaderboards. And of course, badges of another one of those sort of buzz type terms. Leaderboards we hear less about, but I think have a lot of potential. But I think the main thing there is the engaging learners. Again, it's that outcome.
And meaningful, I think.
And meaningful, meaningfully engaging learners, engaging them in a way that actually contributes to learning. That would be the real goal, I guess, in that. So those are some of the topics we're hearing right now. We're still in early stages, but we thought we'd share that for a few reasons. One, I think it's always helpful to hear what peers and peer organizations are thinking about, what seems to be top of mind for them right now. This gives you some visibility into where we're headed with the agenda this year. Again, it won't necessarily be these exact topics, but this is definitely, this resonates with us. This is definitely the direction that we're going in here. And then, to the extent that you have a reaction to these, you can come to the show notes for this episode, which is episode 159. So just go to leadinglearning.com/episode 159. That'll get you there, and comment and tell us what you think about these, or if there are things that we should be thinking about that we haven't talked about here. So again, continuing this process of building that agenda. We have a few months to do this. We're going to make sure we do it right.
So we've been talking about building the program. Let's move on to now talking about the format for LTD. And it's evolved. I mentioned earlier, this will be the fourth time that we've offered learning technology design. We've offered it every year since we first started. The first year, though, it was place-based.
It was indeed. And we made a very conscious decision in year two to take it online. Our sort of mantra, our tagline at Tagoras is reach, revenue, impact. And, we felt as much as we liked the place-based event, we were not going to reach the audience that we wanted to be able to reach. There were too many, budget and time constraints. We knew a lot more people. We had, I think 110 people or so at the first place-based one. And we felt like we could be reaching many multiples of that and taking it online. And particularly since we've got technology in the title there of the event, walking the walk and really leveraging the technology. And so we much more than doubled the attendance the next year as a result of doing that. So, mission accomplished, and we're definitely very bullish on the virtual event as a format at this point.
And so that second year, we went to the online format, 3 days, and we involved sponsors and exhibitors. The third day really was dedicated to sponsors and exhibitors demonstrating their technology. It was primarily platform companies that participated.
Right.
And then last year we took we kept it online, but we went to what we called an extended format. And so we spread events across all weeks of February. We had different live sessions, and we interspersed it with activity on the discussion board. And I think there was a lot to be said for the extended format because it did allow time for conversation to happen in the discussion forums in between sessions.
Spacing of learning.
That's right. It allowed us to kind of, again, walk the walk around that. But I will say that we did get some feedback around, it's hard for people to kind of carve out time over that extended period. So this year we're going to go back to a more collapsed model for the virtual conference. So we're planning to do it for 2 days, but planning to also keep the discussion forums involved. That's right.
We feel like we're getting more and more of a grip on how to use community around an event, and we won't say exactly how we're going to do it this time because we're still in the planning stages on that. But community will be a big part of this again, and with the going from offline to online, with changing the format from 3 day to a month long, with in bringing in the community, we actually tried out some back of the envelope leaderboard type stuff last year in the event. Those types of things. That's part of our promise, and I think part of the ethos of the event, and I hope of what we do in general, that we keep trying to experiment and change, and then to report back and say what were the results of doing that. And I really liked that month-long format, but I do understand. I sympathize that the bringing it down to something shorter, at least for the core event, and making that core event kind of a social learning object that we're then able to work with on an extended period after that. Now, something we are considering, and this is, I think, rocking the virtual conference model a little bit, is that we have had feedback, and we feel this ourselves, that being able to have some sort of a face-to-face complement to the online format would be valuable. And so that's something we're seriously considering, is having a complementary face-to-face event. So there would still be the virtual, but there would be the opportunity, probably as a pre-event, and we're still working this out, if you wanted to be able to connect in person with other attendees, providing the opportunity for doing that. So that's something that we're looking at as part of the event this year.
One of the other things that we're thinking about is this idea of having core content, and we're calling it, for lack of a better term now, the Tagoras core content. And our idea there is that it is really helpful when everyone has a certain shared base that they are working from and that they can refer to. So we have a variety of concepts and tools that those of you who've been listening to us or following us for a while are probably familiar with. Things like the value ramp, things like the learning business maturity model.
Right, market insight matrix, some of our pricing concepts, things like that are just bread and butter. Some of them are completely original to us. Some of us, we've shaped from other places, but just useful tools for anybody in the learning business, and a useful baseline knowledge for anybody coming into an event like this to have, particularly if there's going to be that community component. So we're going to be much more conscious about that this year, and really kind of potentially have the idea of tracks in general at the event this year. The first time we did it, we had some concurrent sessions. Last year, all the sessions were at the same time, basically, so we didn't have two different sessions going on. It was just one session after the other. When we did the concurrents before, they weren't really tracked in any specific way, but this time we're thinking about having sort of a more kind of beginner to intermediate body of content and an intermediate to advanced body of content. And there will still be some sessions that everybody participates in together, but then some where you might split out and the more advanced people can go do their stuff, and the more beginner to intermediate people can go and do their stuff.
And so those are our thoughts around format, how we're thinking about it for 2019, still a work in progress. And I will say that it ties to that first area that we talked about, the program, and because we do see the content, the topics, and the format as being kind of mutually they inform each other. So mutually informative, I guess one could say. And so we're kind of wanting to figure out, as we figure out the right topics, also be thinking through sort of what is the right overall format in which to present those topics, and for example, how to handle the tracks, for example.
Right. So let's wrap up with kind of a third area here. So we've talked about topics, we've talked about format. Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to market this year.
So one of the things that we're planning to do is we've streamlined and simplified the website for the event. We're just trying to make it much easier for people to feel like they've read what there is to read about the event out there, that they can go to sort of primarily a single page and really get the key information there that they need to know about the event.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a much more elegant approach, and it'll be live by the time that this podcast is live, even though we're in the midst of working on it as we're recording the podcast. We're going to also experiment with some new promotional offers. So this time around, for a limited time, there's going to be an offer for anybody who registers to be able to invite somebody else who hasn't attended before at no cost. So if you sign up and you've got a colleague who you think LTD would be great for, you can extend an invitation to that colleague, and they will have the opportunity to attend LTD at no cost. That'll be limited time. We're not going to do it, for the whole run up to the event, but we'll definitely be doing it. As of today, that is available, and into at least through the end of November, we'll be doing that.
And for us, that really ties to part of the mission behind LTD and why we moved to virtual format in the first place is that we really do want to expand the reach. We want to expand that community of learning professionals that we're bringing together. And so that's one way that we're going to try out to see if we can help grow the number of people in the tent.
Right. And we'll also be reaching out again this year to essentially sponsors. You'd said, Celisa, we had some sponsors and exhibitors involved with, the first place-based LTD and then the first online LTD. Last year, we decided that we just didn't want to have that as part of the focus. We put a huge amount of time into things like, for example, working with the session leaders to shape their content, to rehearse their content, to make sure that the educational experience is going to be great. And last year, we decided, we don't have the extra bandwidth to focus on things like sponsors and exhibitors. We'll come back to that in the future. So we're coming back this year, but we're going to take a streamlined approach to that as well. And we're not going to have the sort of, platinum, gold, silver type sponsorship type thing. Basically, we're going to have patrons. So if you want to be a patron for LTD, you can sign up and you'll get some promotional benefit from that. We'll put you on the website. We'll mention you in the marketing for it. You'll have the ability to extend an invitation out to your prospects and customers who you think it would be valuable to have attend the event. And that, that's the package. And anybody who wants to do that, everybody's kind of on an equal level. So you don't have to feel like, if you're a learning management system provider and this other learning management system provider is the platinum sponsor that, you don't know if you want to be involved with this event or not. Everybody's on the same level, basically. And we just want you to be a patron, seriously, to support an event that we think is valuable to the market that we all serve.
Right. It's going back to that truly old school view of patrons that are there to support important work being done and learning being the important work in this case.
That's right. Think of yourself as the Medicis back in Florence, who were the great patrons of the arts. So I'm not sure if you can call LTD art or not, but we'll try our best. So that's, we've talked about topics, we've talked about format, we've talked about marketing for the event. Those are the three big areas that we're working on right now. We're working on those as a learning business ourselves. As we always stress, this is a learning event we're delivering. We have to generate revenue off of it. We want to have the reach, revenue, and impact with it. So you're getting some insight into how we're planning for that, and hopefully some ideas here, or even just some reassurance that people out there are wrestling with some of the same issues that you are around, some of these topical areas that we've been talking about. So with that, we'll wrap up this look into our planning for LTD 2019, though we certainly do hope to see you there. And you can, of course, find out all about it at ltd.tagoras.com. But we'll also include that link in the show notes for this episode, which you can get at leadinglearning.com/episode 159.
And when you check out the show notes, you're going to see various options for subscribing to the podcast. And if you're getting value out of what you hear, we would be truly grateful if you would subscribe, as it helps us get some data on the impact of what we're doing.
There's that impact word again. We'd also be grateful if you'd take just a minute to give us a rating on iTunes. You can go to leadinglearning.com/iTunes. That'll put you in the right place. And if you listen through another channel, a rating or review on one of those channels, Stitcher, whatever it is, that would be great as well. Celisa and I, we just really appreciate the ratings and reviews, but more importantly, those reviews and ratings, they help the podcast crop up in search results whenever anybody's looking for topics, around being in the learning business, which isn't an everyday thing, so if you're giving us that rating and review, we're gonna pop up there. You'll be doing your peers a favor, so take some time today and leave a rating and review for the Leading Learning Podcast.
And we'd be grateful if you would take a minute to visit our sponsor for this quarter, reviewmylms.com. Jeff and I put a lot of time and energy into the Leading Learning Podcast, and one of the reasons we're able to do that is because we can generate revenue through other sources like Review My LMS. So please check out reviewmylms.com, and if you can, contribute a review to help others find the right platform for their needs.
And last, but very far from least, consider telling others about the podcast. You can easily send out a tweet by going to leadinglearning.com/share, or if tweeting isn't your thing, just pick the social network or other medium of your preference, and please spread the good word.
That's right. Give a testimonial.
That's right.
So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Leading Learning Podcast.